Sciences and Bioacoustics at the University of Saint-Étienne, Associate Director of Studies at École Pratique des Hautes Études. I don't know how I'm pronouncing, but I'm trying to do. University of Paris, Science Letters, Senior Member of the Institute of Université de France, Member of Academia Europea, a former visiting Miller Professor at University of California, Berkeley, and a former visiting professor at Hunter College, City of University of New York. He's also a National Geographic Explorer and has been president of IBAC, International Bioacoustic Society, author of over 130 scientific publications from Nature to PNAS to Current Biology. Professor Mathevon has been conducting scientific research on animal acoustic communication for over 30 years. Mathevon's book, The Voices of Nature, How and Why Animals Communicate, which is here, has been one of the phenomenal books that he authored. And that's been awarded with prestigious prizes like R.R. Hawkins Award, together with Prof Award for Excellence in Biological and Life Sciences from the Association of American Publishers. It's also awarded Library Journal's Best Science and Technology Book of the Year. So here is Professor Mathevon. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Guru, for this invitation. And thank you very much for being here. So, fingers crossed that everything will work. So if I have no sounds, I will try to imitate the animals I have recorded. And if I have no video, I don't know how exactly I will do, but I will do my best. Okay. So thank you for coming, and thanks for the nice introduction. So I'm coming, obviously you can guess it from my accent. I'm coming from France. I did the trip yesterday. And this is my lab, the NS Bioacoustic Research Lab, which is in Saint-Étienne, small town near Lyon, for those who knows it. In this lab, actually, we are doing only research focused on bioacoustics. And we work both in the field and in the lab. That's why we have those such big facilities, because we have some animals in captivity. We work on a wild mouse. We work also on crocodiles. I think we are the only, or almost the only lab in the world to have crocodiles in the not big ones, but small ones in the lab, obviously. Okay. So first, this is a playback experiment. So what you just heard is the call of a hippo playing from a loudspeaker, and this is the behavioral answer. It does mean that those animals, they respond to playback. And I always introduce this talk using this video because I think this is a good introduction to what most of the bioacousticians do in the field. They do a lot of playback experiments because then with playback experiments, you have the possibility of asking questions to animals. Do you understand these signals? Which kind of behavior do you express when you hear such a sound? And for instance, with this kind of playback that we did in Mozambique, in the southern part of Africa, we were exploring the individual recognition by voice in hippos. This one is very unhappy of the playback. You know, this is the typical territorial behavior of a hippo, putting poos everywhere. And using those playback experiments, we were able to show that hippos can recognize individuals from their group, from a familiar group which is on the same lake but not from their group, and stranger individuals that have never been in the area before, just using their voice. Okay. So the voice is so important in this animal. And this is the goal of bioacousticians. Understand how animals communicate by sounds. That's the first sound. You know, in the animal world, we are not so numerous by using sound to communicate. So you find example in insects, but there is no mollusk, for instance, using sound. They did not invent any vocal apparatus. And in the vertebrate world, we have many sound specialists, of course, the frogs, even the crocodiles. I will talk a little bit about that. The mammals, we humans, we are part of these animals using sounds to communicate. And of course, the birds, which are sound specialists. the basic theoretical framework of bioacoustics and of animal communication is this one. So it's the chain of information transmission. This means that in any acoustic communication event, you have an individual which is the emitter, and the job of the emitter is to code some information into the signal. Then the signal, which transmits between the emitter and the receiver, and during this transmission, as we will see, there are some events occurring that will alter the signal shape. And then the receiver and the receiver individual, its job is to decode the information which is embedded in the signal. So actually, when you want to study an acoustic communication process, you need to focus on the emitter, on the signal, on the receiver, if you want to really understand the whole thing. To illustrate this, I will bring you into the Atlantic forest of Brazil, where we studied quite a long time ago this small bird, the white-billed warbler. And we chose to study this bird because it's a territorial bird, so the males, they defend territories. The diameter of the territory is around 100 meters, and they defend this territory using a song, by singing. And their song is quite simple. It's like this. Maybe it will be too loud, so maybe you will have to decrease a little bit. The sound, yeah, I think you can just, if you can, or maybe I can, I don't know. Okay, so you see it's a very simple song made of a succession of syllables alternating with syllables, like this. Okay, I would say, okay, this song is perfect to understand how a bird song can transmit information because it's a simple signal. The other thing we were interested in is that when you record this song 100 meters away from the emitter, you obtain that. And that's it. Of course, there has been alteration through the propagation. You clearly see that the first part of the song has totally disappeared because the high-pitched notes, their energy has been totally absorbed by the vegetation. It's a rainforest. And you see also that in the second part, there's almost no more silences because you have echoes between the notes. In short, plenty of signal modification due to the propagation. We know that those birds, they communicate at long range because they are territorial birds defending their territories. How do they do, and which kind of information they can transfer using this sound? The first information that is usually encoded in a bird song, it's the identity of the species. That's why we are able to recognize an American robin and I don't know, a white-billed warbler or whatever bird, okay? Each bird species has its own song. So how to know and to identify the acoustic features that really support this identity of the species, what did we do? First, we recorded tons of males, of white-billed warbler males, and we found out that in all the songs of all the white-billed warbler males that we recorded, they follow this rule. I mean, it's a frequency slope, a slow frequency slope. Along the frequency slope, you have the notes that are along this frequency slope. So we say, okay, as this is the common point of all the songs of all the white-billed warblers, maybe this is the way they code I am a white-billed warbler in their song. To test this, we did playback experiments. So we put loudspeaker inside the territory of a white-billed warbler, and we played back signals, modified signals, or synthetic signals to ask questions to the birds. The first signal that we played back was that one. So this one, yeah, maybe I will try to. I can. No, yeah, I can. Super. So this signal, it's still a white-billed warbler song, but we have put the notes in a random order. when you play back the signal from a loudspeaker in the center of the territory of a whiteboard warbler, you get no behavioral response, okay? Okay, you can say, okay, that's normal. I mean, you made, guys, you made an enormous modification of the song. Yeah, but if you do this with the song of the European wren, if you put the notes at random, you still get the territorial response, okay? Because the European wren does not pay attention to the order of the notes. This one pays. Okay, so we decided to make more gentle, more subtle modification of the song, and we did this one, for instance. So this one, we increased a little bit the slope of the frequency modulation. Still, now we hear, it looks like a whiteboard warbler song, but when we did the playback experiments with this song, we got no behavioral response. Does not mean that for those birds, this signal is no more the song of a whiteboard warbler. We did the reverse by decreasing the slope, okay? It sounds like a whiteboard warbler song, but here also we killed the behavioral response. Actually, it came out that this bird is extremely sensitive to the frequency slope along with you have the notes, okay? To do a final check of this, we synthesize a totally artificial song, pure tone, no note, no silence. We respected only one thing, the frequency modulation rule. When we played back this signal from a loudspeaker in the center of the territory of a whiteboard warbler, believe me or not, but we got territorial reaction. So the birds were attacking the loudspeaker. So for them, it was a whiteboard warbler song. Not for long, because I did not say that the birds were not able to make the difference between this pure synthetic tone and a normal, natural song. Of course, birds are acoustic specialists, so they felt the difference. But on the first trial, they were really, they were really fooled by this synthetic signal, because the code, the way they code the information, I am a whiteboard warbler, was there. Okay? The last thing that we did, we tried also this signal where we played back only half, the second half of the song. You remember? It's this half of the song which remains after 100 meters of propagation. When you play back this signal, we got a territorial response. So actually, the whiteboard warbler does not need the whole song to identify an individual of this species. So it does mean that this information, the species identity, I am a whiteboard warbler, it's an information that will propagate at long range. It's kind of a public information, okay? I am a male in my territory. I sing as loud as possible, and despite the degradation that are, imposed by the forest environment, even at 100 or even more than 100 meters, my song can be understood by other males, okay? Second information that is very usually coded in the song of birdsong, it's the identity of the singer, so the individual identity. It's very often coded because when you have territorial birds singing, the neighbors, they don't spend all their time attacking each other. Does mean that usually they know each other. They are able to recognize them. And we searched for this information in the song of the whiteboard warbler. These are two songs from two different individuals. At first glance, they look very, very similar. But now, if you zoom on those songs, you find that along the slope, you have some small irregularities, okay? So you see, between two notes, let's say that on the left, we have Peter. Peter has small irregularities, and Paul, on the right, has another one. And if you record Peter 30 times, 30 songs, In the 30 songs, you will find the same irregularities at the same place. The same for Paul. So the acoustic analysis tells you, yes, there is an individual signature in the song. But do the birds use it? To know it, you have to go in the field and to do the playback experiments. We did it, those experiments are a little bit difficult to do because you have to find, you have to choose a male that you will test. Then you put the loudspeaker on the border of its territory. And then you play, let's say that this male is Peter, you will play the song of Paul, which is the neighbor. So you have to check that the neighbor is far away, blah, 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 etc. When we play back the song of Paul, almost no reaction by Peter. Paul is singing, but he's still in its territory. He does not attack me, so that's okay. Then, using our computer, we modified a little bit Paul's song. You see, we took those two notes there, and we increased a little bit their frequency. Does mean that we changed the temporal position of the irregularity in the song. On purpose, I chose a song with a big irregularity. It's not always like that. And this was the only modification that we did to the song of Paul. But when we played back this modified song, we got an extremely strong territorial reaction, actually the same territorial reaction as the one we get when we play back a song from a stranger individual. For the tested bird, this is no more the neighbor. Okay? We changed the individual identity. The interesting thing is that all these irregularities in the song are always in the first part of the song, which is the part that disappears at long distance. What does it mean? It does mean that this individual identity, that these irregularities that code for the individual identity, they will disappear at long range. And so individual identity in this bird song, it's a private information. It will reach on individuals that are close to the emitter birds. Does it make sense? Okay? So in that song, you have at least two information: the species identity, the individual identity. They are not coded by the same acoustic filters. In one case, the acoustic filters propagate very well. In the other case, it propagates badly. Okay? And so you have a public and a private information. I do not mean that this is the only information that you have in this song. Probably you have other information. You have probably information about the motivation of the singer, the quality of the singer, these kind of dynamic ones. But we did not investigate in this song those information, but I will come back later to them. And this is a big study that we are doing now in my lab. We are examining all the songs of all the passerines of the world, at least 50% of the passerines of the world, and we are really assessing how efficient the different types of songs the bird can use, how efficient they can be to transmit species identity information at long range. And of course, depending on the acoustic strategy, I would say, the efficiency is different. And below, you have I think, very clear maps. The flat whistles, you know, the birds that use only these like this to code in their song. Those flat whistles, they are really overrepresented in rainforest. And those flat whistles, they are the most efficient strategy to transmit species identity at long range. And conversely, the fast modulated whistles, you know, those very complicated songs. Of course, you have some rainforest birds that use them, but mostly they are mostly avoided in rainforest because they don't propagate at very long range. This study has not yet been published, so it's a secret. You are the only one to know it. Okay, so this is static information. Now let's move to dynamic information. And it's static information because I've been talking about signatures, so information that stays for long in the signal. Now let's move to dynamic information, and for this, I will change the model. I will go to crocodiles, because I'm sure you're all looking forward crocodilians. So crocodilians, you know, they are not far from birds. In the phylogenetic tree, they are very close. They are cousins of birds. They are There are far more cousins to birds than to snakes, for instance. And if you have a look on the brain of the crocodilians, which is the brain on the top, it's an elongated bird brain. It's really, really close. And the crocodilians, they make nests. This is a nest from a gray caiman in French Guiana. And they also take care of their young. Here you have a spectacled caiman female, mother, with her young. You know, you see the little heads. That's the young. That's the nestlings. In some crocodilian species, actually, even the males take care of the young. So it's not a general rule that it's the female. And in the gharial, for instance, you probably know the gharial. You are the country of the gharial. It's the males who take care of the young. It's not the female. Apparently, never saw a gharial, but I've been told that. And you have acoustic communication between the adults and the young. We started to investigate this acoustic communication in crocodilians 15 years ago. And we started with a very simple thing. We recorded mature eggs. You know, the eggs, the maturation takes around 3 months. And if you come at the end of the 3 months, just before they hatch, if you shake a little bit the eggs, you can record signals. You can record this kind of hatching calls. And then we did playback experiments. We played back these hatching calls to mature eggs. And we played back, which was a little bit more tricky, those hatching calls to females. So we buried the loudspeaker in place of the nest and in place of the eggs, and we play back those calls. This first video show you. Oh, sorry, I have to be a little bit more patient. So this first video show you an example of a playback experiment on the eggs. It should work. It does not work. Okay, so probably you have a technical, but this one works. Okay, see this one? You have the loudspeaker, which is buried under the female. So you cannot hear the sound, but she can. And so we are emitting those hatching calls. And clearly the females respond by digging the nest, okay? So those hatching calls, they elicit the parental behavior. What they elicit also, they elicit hatching. So when a mature egg hears those hatching calls, the embryos will get out, will get out of the egg. So those hatching calls, they promote hatching synchronization within the nest and parental care. Then we moved to the field and we went to Guyana in South America and we worked with the black caiman. The black caiman is a very big crocodilian. And we were there to work on the acoustic communication between the mother and her young. And I was there with my PhD student, Amélie, who is on the boat there. And we decided, so first you have to imagine the situation. We worked on the Rupununi River. And along this river, every kilometer or so, we had a family of black caiman. So one female with her young near the water on the shore. And the female was staying in the water, inside the river. And what we did, we recorded those young in two very different situations. The first situation was what we called undisturbed situation. So you have to imagine the context. You have those 30, 50 young on the shore. The river is there. And we put a recorder with a mic just in the middle of the group. And we just let the recordings going on for a while without us. And during this time, the young, they emit contact calls, things like this. And we recorded the same young during what we call the predator attack. You have the picture speaks by himself, and this is the kind of situation that we had. Okay, so you see the female is really not pleased with us recording. So this was during another field trip, because this one is a spectacled caiman. Fortunately, it's a small one, because with the black caiman, it's another story, of course. But so this is the basic thing. So we recorded those young in this distress context, and we compare between the two calls. And the calls we call, basically it's the same call. It's a graded call, but you can find some differences. The contact calls is softer, like this. The distress calls is a little bit higher pitched. Okay, and you have you see the frequency modulation has increased, and you have also more energy in the high frequencies. Okay, but basically the young, they can go from the contact to the distress call in a graded manner, so they can code for their level of distress actually. Then we did playback experiment. This is an example to show you how those crocodiles they can react to a playback of a call. So this one has tried to keep the loudspeaker. This was an experiment in captivity, but on the black caiman we did it in the wild. And to put it in a nutshell, what did we observe? When we were playing back contact calls, the black caiman female was staying motionless in the river. Of course, because actually we did not modify the situation. The young were already emitting contact calls, and we just added a little bit of contact calls through our loudspeaker, but it basically did not change nothing. The young, they were attracted by the loudspeaker. So at the end of the playback, they were surrounding the loudspeaker. But where we were emitting predator attack calls, distress calls, then we had enormous responses by the females, like this, coming to the loudspeaker. She clearly wanted to defend the young. And what about the nestlings' behavior? They freeze, actually. So they remain motionless, and they even call, and their calls, we recorded them, and they were more like distress calls than contact calls. Okay, so this vocal, so the crocodiles, they have a vocal repertoire, we can say that, but it is graded, but in some species it can be discrete, of course. And we saw the static information with the white-browed warbler song and the dynamic information in the crocodile calls. Now, in most of the animal vocalizations, you have an interaction between static signatures and dynamic, I would say, emotional information in the calls. How do these information interact? We had a PhD student those last years. We did a nice work with puppy whines. And I will show you this video with clearly showed things. So you see the loudspeaker there. The loudspeaker is in a black sock, and it is emitting the puppy whines. And look at the behavior of the female. There is no odor, absolutely no odor, nothing, only the sound. And what we found with these playback experiments, we found that in the whines of those puppies, you have two kinds of information. You have the identity of the litters and of the individual. So this mother knows that this, loudspeaker belongs to her pups. And you have also information about the weight of the puppy. Yeah, it's a little bit harder for her, but she's doing that. I mean, can you believe it? It's only acoustic which triggers this behavior. Okay, sorry for the dog friends, because you don't need tons of neurons to do it, but okay, I will skip that. Okay, so we really found that in those puppy whines, you have a combination between this dynamic and static information, and I mean the dog mothers, they use it to assess if it's a puppy from their litter and which kind of need the puppy expresses through its call. Okay, probably I will skip this because I won't have time to do it. Okay, now up to now we focused on very, I would say, simple situation where you have one emitter, one receiver, and that's it. Let's move to vocalization within a group or a social group. And with my colleague Colin Reichmuth and Isabelle Charrier and Caroline Cazet from the University of Santa Cruz in California, we've been studying the elephant seal for at least 10 years, 10, 15 years. And it came out that it was a really interesting, it is a really interesting model to understand acoustic communication process. So a few words about their biology. So elephant seals, they are seals, but they are enormous seals, okay? They are like a truck. I mean, it's 3 tons, so it's something. And they spend most of their life in the sea, in the Pacific Ocean, because this is the northern species, feeding in the Pacific Ocean. And at the breeding season, they make a 3,000 trip to go to the coast of California and Mexico. And they breed in these colonies. So this is a colony of elephant seal. And the colony, the basic arrangement of the colony is that you have alpha males, which are the powerful males that want to control an area. And you have beta males. Those beta males, they are adult males, but they are not so strong. They don't want to control everything. But still, they will try to get access, so to say, to the females when the alpha males is occupied elsewhere. And there is also peripheral males. Those peripherals, usually they are younger and they just come to learn probably because they cannot copulate or reproduce. And they stay here for a couple of months, even a little bit more than that. They arrive around November and they will stay until February, and they don't drink and don't eat. So they lose up to 30% of their weight. So it's an enormous effort to come there, okay? You have 2 dates to remember regarding the elephant seals, and then when you will discuss with your friends, that's a good point to make. 2 dates. The first date is the peak of birth. It's Christmas, okay, so easy to remember. And the peak of copulation, it's February 14. I don't know if you have something on February 13, but in France we use the Lover's Day. So that's the date that you have to remember. I mean, the elephant seals, they copulate mostly on the Lover's Day. Sorry for that. But I'm sure you will remember it. Now, what we did, okay, when we arrived on this colony, we saw this kind of behavior. The males, sometimes they fight, but not so many times, because it's very dangerous to fight for an elephant seal male, because they have teeth like this. They are extremely powerful. They can kill each other. So most of the time, what do you observe? You observe 2 males arriving. Okay, clearly one is stronger than another, probably, because there is a hierarchy in the males. One male, raises its head and then go clack, 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 and the other one goes away. And that's the way, most of the time, the interaction between the males go on. And so our first guess was that in the voice of the elephant seals, there could be some information about the strength of the male. We searched for the size, the body size, or something, linked to the physical abilities. We searched for that, and we did not find anything. Okay. We found that, of course, the acoustic properties of the calls are correlated to the size. But when we did playback experiment, we found that the males, they don't care. And actually, it came out that what they care about is, once again, the individual signature. Actually, those males, they know each other by their voice. And what you have here is the acoustic space of the voices of the elephant seal that we recorded. I won't go into the details, but if you have a quick look on those spectrograms, you see that there are 2 recordings by males. Those 2 recordings, they have been made at 1 year there's 1 year apart, okay? And you see there is a total stability of the call from 1 year to the next one, okay? So those signatures are very, very stable. Just to show you, I will skip this, how you can test it. This is a playback experiment on this male. The loudspeaker is on the right. The loudspeaker will emit the voice of a male that is stronger than the tested one. It does mean that 1 or 2 weeks before, they fighted, and this one lost the fight. Look at his behavior. Clearly, he is afraid of the voice of the one, okay? Because there's no other male behind the loudspeaker. It's only the voice which triggers the behavior. Second video, the same individual, the same male, okay, which is there now. The loudspeaker is still on the right. But now we will play back the voice of a male. This one won the fight 2 weeks before, okay? So the first thing that you notice is that the behavioral reaction is less quick, okay? He waits. But after a little while, he will start reacting. And you will see that the reaction is totally different. It calls, and it approaches the loudspeaker. But now, we have another thing that is going to occur. Look, there is a male there. This one, of course, he does not care about the loudspeaker. So he thinks that it's the male over there that is emitting the call. It turns out that this male is stronger than the tested male. And look, it calls in response, and this one says, ho, I made a mistake. Let's go back, okay? So 2 experiments in one. You see? So that's the way the elephant seals, navigate, so to say, in their social system using the voice. And we found in further experiments, we found that if you modify the rhythm of those calls, clack, 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 then you change the individual identity of the individual, and rapidly they are no more able to recognize themselves. Another thing that we found out is that when they are young, the social network, which is on the top in the image, the social network is not very huge. It does mean that each individual interacts with a small number of individuals. And this correlates with a very weak individual signature in the calls of young elephant seals, except one individual which has a weird voice. All the others, they are packed together. This means that you cannot distinguish between the males when they are young. But when they reach the adult age, the social networks becomes extremely complicated. It does mean that they interact with tons of individuals, and the voices are clearly defined. So to navigate this complicated social system, they use a lot their voice. Okay? Yeah, I won't go into details there. It's just to keep you in mind that things can be far more complicated if you go to more complicated social system. And for instance, we know that we use a lot, acoustic communication, and our language is extremely sophisticated, and clearly we are the animal that use the most complicated, I would say, social and communication system. But if you go to our closest cousins, the chimpanzee and the bonobos, then you will see that here also, they have to navigate an extremely complex social system, which is very similar actually to our system, where they make, friends, they make enemies, they make long-term relationships, because that's the fact. When you are in a social group, you make long-term relationships, and then you have a very complex communication system usually. And Cédric Girard-Boutos is part of my team actually, and he's just published this nice paper in Science Advances about how chimpanzees can use combinatorial mechanisms to create information, to code information in their code, as we do actually in our language. Okay, now I would like to introduce you to another model which we study in my lab. It's the African stripe model. Do I have time still? Yes, okay. Because I can talk about bioacoustics for hours, so don't hesitate to stop me when you say, this guy has. I have heard sufficient bioacoustic stories this afternoon. I want to go and have a cup of tea. Okay. So why did we choose to work on this model? First, because it's a mouse. And as you know, the mouse is a model that is strongly used in medical studies, etc. But most of the people, they only study the laboratory mouse, which is, between us, is a little bit degenerated, okay? And there's many strains that are even deaf. So yeah. So we decided to say, okay, we know a lot about lab mice, but we don't know a lot about wild mice, actually. So let's go and see how they communicate. The other thing is that this species is very interesting because it's a cooperative breeder. I don't know if you know what is a cooperative breeder. Yeah, maybe not. You should, because we are cooperative breeders, because we breed our children with, tons of other persons than the parents, and the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, and even people that we don't know, the nurses, the whatever. At schools, we give our children to people that we have never met, etc. So we are a cooperative breeder. And this mouse is a cooperative breeder. This means that they breed their young, the parents breed their young with the help of other individuals. And that's very interesting because then it does mean that probably you have a complex communication network because many individuals have to interact each other on the long term. Okay. The other thing that is interesting is that it's ultrasounds. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, probably if you come from the field of bioacoustics, but you know there is no physical difference between sounds, infrasounds, and ultrasounds. Everything is sound. But the difference is that what we call ultrasounds, it's the sounds that are too high-pitched to be heard by humans. That's the only thing. And those mice, they communicate by ultrasound. Okay, so a few words about their biology. So they they live in family, okay, big families, as they are cooperative breeders. During the night, they are in the bush, nest bush, and during the day, they get out of the bush. And one interesting thing for us is that during 45 minutes, they stay just in the vicinity of the bush, just in front of the bush, just to warm a little bit because they live in southern Africa and the temperature is not so good during the night. They warm during 45 minutes, and during those 45 minutes, they chat a lot, okay? So they chat a lot, and they are here. And you can be here recording the mouse. You can be here doing playback experiment with the mice, which is very rare with rodents because most of the rodents, they run everywhere, and you don't know exactly where individuals are. With this model, we have a nice situation where we can approach the mice and we can really do experiments with them. Then, after 45 minutes, the group disperse on the family territory. They feed by themselves, and when night is coming, they go back to the nest. And they have territories. So when we are in the field, we have those territories of the family mice. Okay? Okay, so we have also those mice in the laboratory. And first, to get a sense of what is an ultrasound, this is a recording of 2 mice that have been done in my lab. And on the spectrogram below, I put only, this is my PhD student, Leo, actually, who did that. He puts only the sounds between 0 and 20 kilohertz. It does mean roughly the bandwidth that we are able to hear, okay? So you can hear only noises from the cage. In the second video, you will have the full spectrum, and Leo has decreased the frequency of everything so that we can hear the call of the mice. It's the same video, but now you have access to the ultrasounds. Had you ever heard a mouse singing? No, okay, so this is another story that you can tell your friends. And you see, all those calls, they are around between 60 and 70 kilohertz. I mean, it's enormous. In this room, there are still people able to hear up to 20 kilohertz, but me, no. Because you lose this ability with age. Okay, so, and you see, there are 2, and they are chatting, all the time. So they exchange information. Okay, so the first thing that we decided to do, because nobody has never, explored the acoustic world of this mouse, in the lab, we recorded those mice in different types of situations. So we put 2 familiar mice together, 2 unfamiliar mice together, male, female, 2 males, 2 females, blah, blah, blah. And we recorded them, and then we got the repertoire. This is a UMAP. I don't know if you are familiar with this kind of representation, but basically it's an acoustic space, I would say. Each dot is 1 call, okay? And you have the acoustic space of the mice. And you see that depending on the context, if you have 2 familiar females or 1 unfamiliar male and unfamiliar female, they don't use the same calls. So this means that they use those calls on purpose. It's not a reflex or a reflexing thing that they are just emitting calls. No, 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 no. They use calls, they communicate. They use a call, different calls depending on the receiver, okay? And if we, of course, those calls, we decrease the pitch, and we also decrease the speed, but this is the kind of call that they emit. This is the long down, okay? So, of course, it's very short and high pitch. Huh? This is just for us that this call has been transformed. And this is, I love this one, it's the trill call. This is apparently emitted during courtship, but we still don't know if it's only the male or if it is the female and the male which are emitting this. Okay, so the mice do that. I mean, you can imagine that. Okay, we tested also the auditory. We measured the auditory abilities of this mouse, and we found that, of course, they can hear up to 60, 70 kilohertz without any problem. They can hear also far below than that. You see there is a big wide zone there where the hearing is very good, but they don't communicate in this frequency range. But probably it's very useful to have an idea of, is there a predator coming or something like this? Okay. Probably. What we found also, and it's not, it was totally expected, is that the ultrasound, they are very high-pitched. If you remember from the white-broad warbler, the high-pitched sounds, they degrade very quickly with propagation. You see, after 100 meter and a half, you have a mouse here, you have no more signal here, okay? So the active space of the ultrasounds around the mouse, it's 3 meters. You have no more signals. So it's a very short-range communication, very short-range signals. You see, and the elephants with their infrasounds, they can communicate up to 1 kilometer without problem. Last year in Mozambique, we did some playback experiments with elephants, and we got behavioral response at 1 kilometer. We measured it, with a laser thing, and the elephant was at 1 kilometer, and clearly he reacted to our playback. For the birds, it's more, around 100, 200 meters, the active space of the songs. And for the mice, it's 1, 2 meters maximum. Okay? So they have a problem. They have a problem because they have a very short active space, very small active space, and they have to defend territories. And those territories are big compared to the size of these mice and to the active space of this signal. So this is the place where we are doing the field experiment. So you have the field station in a very remote place in the Karoo, which is a kind of a desert, semi-desert area, desertic area in South Africa. And the triangle is the area where we have the mice territories. And the mouse territory, it's like this. You have the nest bush in the middle, and then you have other bushes where the mice, they feed along the day, okay? In this field site, the mice are trapped, they are marked, so we know exactly who is who have recorded, tons of different mice. So we know, for instance, that you have an individual signature in the voice of these mice too. And to put it in a nutshell, using passive acoustic monitoring, so we put, some automatic recorders, audio mouse actually, on these territories. To put it in a nutshell, we found that those mice, they use their repertoire, their vocal repertoire, differently depending on where they call. And we found out that it's in the nest bush that they use the most all the calls, obviously because they communicate within their cooperative family group. And when they are inside their territory, they use only part of this repertoire. And when they are on bushes that are on the border of two territories, so where they meet probably neighbors, then they use those dawn calls, which are probably quite aggressive calls, okay? We found using neural network techniques and things like this that you have family signature. Each family can be recognized by its voice. And actually, those neural networks now, they do amazing things because you can go into the calculation and really find out which part of the acoustic signal is responsible for the signature. I won't go into the details. Just to end with this mouse thing, we did playback experiment, which is tricky, of course, because it's experiments with ultrasounds. So you have to use an ultrasound speaker, which is on the left, and microphone, ultrasound mic, which are here. And you have a GoPro, which is filming everything from the top. And here we are only at a few meters behind the table, you know, monitoring everything from our laptop, which is very, very easy in the field. And this was the first playback experiment on mice in the field, actually. And so videos, this is the playback of a stranger individual. So you see this mouse, you will see the playback is the red spot, chook. As soon as she hears the calls from a stranger individuals, when she goes back to it's sorry, I say she because in French mouse it's a feminine word, but okay, so it's, I don't know if it was a male or a female. Now, if you do a playback of a neighbor individual, so same system, the red is the playback, and you see that clearly it's not the same behavioral reaction. Now it is very interested in the playback. Say, okay, who is coming? I know, but why is it approaching my group? Okay, if you are interested in really go into the details of this study, it has just been published, actually. It's in press in Current Biology. It's already available, and if you need the paper, I can also send it to you. And we are very proud because our little mouse has made the cover of Current Biology. So it's cute, huh? Of course. Okay, just now to have a very broad picture, but I won't go into any details. You have tons of other bioacoustics topics. So probably those of you who are in the bioacoustics world, you already know. You know, songbirds are really studied for vocal learning because we learn the way we speak, and there are not so many animals who do that, but the songbirds, they do that. They have to learn their songs to be able to produce them at the adult age. So they are excellent models to study vocal learning. With monkeys and apes, there are also tons of studies about referential communication. Does mean that when we speak, you know, if I say, look at that table, everybody in this room knows that I'm referent. I'm speaking of this stuff. Okay. In animal languages, so to say, it's not so obvious to find referential communication. In the vervet monkey, it has been found a long time ago. This monkey has alarm calls that differ depending on the type of predators. So if it's an aerial predator or a terrestrial predator, they don't use the same call. So they clearly, you know, say, okay, that's an aerial, that's a terrestrial, etc. And the others know, of course. The other members of the group, they know. Okay. Now a few words, because I have always this question, but why on earth are you studying, you know, animal acoustic communication? I mean, just by it's interesting, that's the main reason, and we are here to understand our world. But you have also some applied things that can be very important. I showed you that using playback experiment, you can attract. You can also repel, depending on the kind of signals that you use. And this is very employed, those alarm calls or distress calls, to repel the animals. And this is very useful. We had a contract with the train company, the French train company, SNCF, those last years, to build a signal, a sound signal, that will be emitted in front of the train to avoid, you know, to scare the animals and to avoid accident with trains. When you take a plane, when there are birds on the airport, that is extremely dangerous for the planes. And on many airports, you have loudspeakers that can be used to emit distress calls or synthetic signals that will scare the bird before you will take off. Okay. Another field where bioacoustics can have applied possibilities is that vocalizations. In vocalizations, you have dynamic information, so you can find indicators of the physiological state of your animal, and this is important in medical studies. For instance, I won't go into details, but we did a study with rats and to assess the quality of the sleep or whatever with rats, and we used the rat vocalizations to do that with this kind of system where you can track the animals. And another possibility that for welfare, for instance, when you breed animals, you breed chickens, for instance. Let's imagine that you have thousands and thousands of chickens that you are breeding. You can monitor acoustically if your chickens are okay or if something is happening. Okay. And this is, of course, it's not really costly, and that can be very, very efficient. Another field is the impact of anthropogenic noise. It's a very important field. Now noise is totally recognized as a pollutant, as a chemicals or things like this. So there's plenty of studies there. For instance, in my lab, we are studying the effect of boat noise in marine waters and in fresh waters. This is a project that we did on a coral reef fish, because we have a field station in French Polynesia we are working with. And you see that when we play back the sound of the boat, all those fish, they go inside the coral reef. And the problem for those fish is that they feed outside. So they lose time, actually, when there's boats. Okay? Another applied thing that is very interesting is wildlife monitoring. And this is also a project that we did in my lab on this rock ptarmigan, which is a bird living in very high mountains and very, very threatened in France due to climate change, of course. And we monitor these birds using those automatic recorders during the breeding season, because those birds, each bird has a vocal signature. So you can count the bird in a place, because you can be sure that it's Peter, Paul, and Jacques that were there. And this is very efficient because you can count them during the whole breeding season. In the past, what was done, they sent 5, 6, 10 people in the mountain counting for the birds, but you cannot do that every day. Okay? So with this kind of system, you can count on a daily basis. This is the call of the rock ptarmigan. Okay, and finally, and that's the final point, it's soundscape monitoring. Okay? And this is a field which is really increasing nowadays. The basic idea is that the soundscape that you can record in an environment, it's a very good proxy of the biodiversity that you have in this environment. These recordings, for instance, has been done in the forest of French Guiana during the night. And you hear different things, okay? And there is plenty of things that we cannot hear because it's too high pitch. You see, we hear up to 20, but above 10, 20, you still find some things. It's the bats, probably, and some insects, too, okay? And you see that, of course, the more animals you have in this environment, the more complex will be the soundscape. If you go to a forest that has been planted, you are an artificial forest, you will see only one species of tree. There is nothing, almost no birds, almost no insect. Now, if you go to a natural pristine rainforest, you will have an amazing soundscape. So you clearly see that even if not all the animals emit sounds, you have a sufficient number of species that are there and that can, illustrate the level of biodiversity. And we are doing this kind of research in a reserve in Maputo in Mozambique. We have been recording different biotopes near lakes, in forests, etc., to see how this, to see actually the biodiversity, to monitor the dynamics of the biodiversity of this system, and you can have this kind of soundscape recording. So some people are interested in really knowing which animal is doing what. Okay, that can be very tricky because first you have to know who is there, but you can also use this signal just as they are, as a proxy of biodiversity without really searching for who is emitting what, okay? And for instance, it's exactly what we do in Mozambique because we don't have the sufficient knowledge to know who, the birds, it's okay, but the insects, for instance, nobody knows exactly which kind of insects are in this reserve. So we use these recordings as proxy of biodiversity, and we really follow the dynamic of the ecosystem, and this is, for instance, an acoustic space, each of this Mozambican reserve. Each dot is 1 minute of recording, and each color is a type of environment. The green one is the forest, for instance. And actually, the forest, the soundscape changes between the night and the day, of course, but it changes also along the year, depending on the humidity, etc., the temperature, etc. Okay, so take-home messages. Animal vocalizations are informative signals. So that's the main signal. Probably most of you already knew that. Information can be static, the signatures, or dynamic, condition-related. Playback is a great tool to get into acoustic communication systems. Of course, it does not mean that you can do playback anywhere with any animals as long as you want. I mean, when you do a playback, you disturb the animals. So you have to think about it, of course. Don't do it on a threatened species or whatever, because you can put a mess in a social organization. So you have to be careful, but still it's a great tool. And I hope that you are all convinced that bioacoustics is amazing. Thank you very much. And just this last slide, so is to tell you that we organized 3 different courses on bioacoustics. The main one is the International Master of Bioacoustics. It's a 1-year program, 3-4 months of lectures at the University of Saint-Étienne in France during September to December. And then the students have to do a 6-month internship that can be anywhere in the world in the lab, okay? So that's the first thing. We organized the Bioacoustics Winter School, which is more an undergraduate program or a program for somebody who really wants the basics in bioacoustics. It's a 2 weeks course which takes place every January, still at the University of Saint-Étienne. And we organize also the Tropical Bioacoustics School, which is a graduate program, so not for beginners, I would say. So it's for PhD or postdocs. We organize it every 2 years. The first one was in French Guiana, so really in the rainforest. So we took all the students by helicopter from Cayenne to a field station in French Guiana for 2 weeks. And the last one was this year, actually. It was in French Polynesia. It was dedicated to marine bioacoustics. And the 16 students that you have there, plus the 16 instructors, we spent 2 weeks studying marine bioacoustics. And we try to keep the fees as low as possible. For instance, for the Tropical Bioacoustics School in French Guiana, it was the students had to pay the travel to Guyana, but then it was only 350 euros for the 2 weeks, food and lodging included, so it's not too bad. Okay, and now I'm prospecting for the next one, which will be in 2027. And I mean, we'll see, maybe. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's okay, I'm not too long?
Perfect.
Okay.
Any questions? Ooh.
Professor Mathevon, I have a question. My name is Vivek. Have you observed changes in or variations in vocalizations amongst a single species but different population groups? Basically like a dialect. I mean, let's take hippos. Hippos or elephants. I see.
They make copy errors when they do that. And so when you have two populations of birds from the same species, generations after, if they never mix, generation after generation, you will have a cultural drift that will, separate progressively those two populations. And so you will have dialects. And there's even examples when after a while, those two populations came into contact again, but they were no more able to communicate. There are several examples like this in the animal world. We did in my lab a study. It's not already published, but we did a study on a bird which is which is part of those birds who don't learn their song, because not all the birds learn their song. And it's a non-ocene passerine, for those who know, from the Amazonian forest. And we found that this bird, it's the screaming piha, it is very widespread. It's common in all the Amazonian basin, everywhere. And we compared the songs from different populations. And what we found a drift from the east to west, or west to east, as we want. We found a drift that corresponds totally to the genetic drift. So it really depends on which animals you are. If you focus on songbirds which learn, then you have a cultural drift, for sure.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question? Last quick.
Okay. Yes, please.
Thank you. That was a fantastic talk. I had two questions, but I can stick to one if there's less time. My first question was about the territorial calls in the birds that you were talking about. I was just wondering, first of all, I don't know if it's a learned behavior, but I was just wondering, since the last part of the call is extremely conserved and that's a species-specific aspect, if this is a learned behavior, is the last part an innate aspect and the first part is what they learn, or is the entire thing learned? And if so, how does a variation come into it?
Yeah. So the response is I don't know, of course, because of course so this is the reasonable response, I would say. But I think that it's a songbird, so I think everything is learned. Actually, if you go into the studies about how songbirds learn their song, there have been some studies where they isolate young birds and they see how the songs, what they're able. And usually they're able to emit something. And this something is within the frequency range of the species. It has something to do with the typical song of the species, but it's not the true song. So I can imagine that in the white-winged warbler, there is probably something genetic which is, modulated by the cultural thing. What we found when we compared, because we did some recordings from different populations, not at a very big scale, but at a scale of 100 kilometers, I would say, we found that indeed there are some very local dialects. We were able to distinguish between the different populations. But I don't know if the second part is more innate than the first part. That's because maybe the individual signature is also something very, not innate, but due to some anatomical something of each individual. Because it's not so easy to emit this call, choo, 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 in very regular. So sometimes maybe they have to shift, you know, due to their vocal cord anatomy or blah, blah, blah. And so maybe the individual signature is really due to this thing. Maybe it's not a learned thing. That's also possible. Maybe they learn how to sing, but then the imperfection that are innate. That's possible.
Thanks. Can I ask a second? Or?
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And I have a question about the crocodile work that you presented. And I come from having studied parental care in frogs, where when they perceive a threat, the adult makes vocalizations. You presented how the juveniles vocalize to a threat. What does the adult do in crocodiles? Do they have a
excellent question. Yes. I have only anecdotal observations. We never studied that because it's extremely difficult to study in crocodiles. But I observed several times on several species in the wild a crocodilian female calling to attract her young. And each time I observed that, it was in a situation where the females was feeling a danger or something like this. I remember two situations. The first one was we were approaching by boat. We were in a small boat approaching a spectacled caiman female. And she decided she was not pleased with that. And it was almost at night. And she went away. She was with her young. And we clearly heard, but unfortunately, we were not recording at that time. And she emitted something like, that was the signal. And I heard this exactly same signal from a crocodile mother, from a Nile crocodile mother. So very big individual. When we did, we just did a playback experiment. Probably the loudspeaker was at 10 meters from her and her young. And we emitted distress calls from big individuals. And she did not like it. She was attracted by distress calls from young individuals, but this time we emitted distress calls recorded from bigger ones, and she did exactly the same behavior. She swam around her young, and then she was like this, and she said, and all the nestlings follow. So yes, to answer your question, but this remains to be studied.
Good. Thank you, sir. My question is, you talked about the application of all these bioacoustics. Can that be used to, when we have crop riding elephants in here, it's a big menace, and it has a conservation value if we can apply this to chase away elephants.
Sorry, I'm not sure I have, for conservation purposes, you mean?
Here, in the elephants, they crop ride. They come out of the forest and they ride
the
crops.
Elephants.
Yeah,
The elephants.
Elephants.
Yes. Yeah, I guess that's a big problem. It's also, in Mozambique, when we are working, I also talked to a guy who asked me exactly the same question, and they are trying to do some things with the elephants. I would say maybe, but I know that they have made some trials. For instance, using the sounds of bees, because elephants, they don't like bees. So if you play back the sound of a big hive, you know, apparently you can repel them. The problem with elephants is that they are, as you probably know, extremely clever. So this is a general problem. Habituation is a general problem with animals. But with elephants, I can guess that, you know, they catch the situations like this. So I will answer you with two examples, not taken from elephants. First example with the black caiman, which has a smaller brain than the elephants. Huh? The black caiman, the very first trial we did with the black caiman, we were in French Guiana on a lake, and we did a playback experiment from a boat. We play back distress calls of young distress calls. We had an enormous black caiman females coming like this. She was really attacking us. And we say, okay, that's great. We will be able to do tons of playback experiments. We came back the day after. We did exactly the same thing, no response, no more response. And then we moved to the next female, which was at 100 meters on the same lake, no response. We killed the behavioral answers of all the females because they have associated those two guys coming by boat and this strange sound coming from the loudspeaker. And that's why a year or two after, we went to this Rupunini River where we had those families separated by 1 kilometer to have, naive animals each time. So that's the first example. I forgot the other one that I wanted to tell you. But, I mean, habituation is an enormous problem. I was telling you about the distress calls that are used on the airport, to scare birds. This idea is old, but it has always been very tricky to do it because after a while, the birds, they habituate and they stop responding to your signal. And why it still works nowadays? It first because it's no more natural distress calls that are used. It's synthetic signals that are modified a little bit every time. So then the birds, it limits the habituation. And also from time to time, the guys on the airport, they go and they kill the birds. So then the birds, they associate again the distress calls with a real danger. And so with the elephants, that's a big problem. In the reserve where we work in Mozambique, they have put fences, very big fences, electric ones, okay? And the elephants, one day, I think they were efficient for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, one elephant had discovered that with his tucks, it was possible to touch the electric wire without being, shocked. He found that, so he pulled out the things, etc. And in a few days, this behavior was spread all over the reserve. Okay, they all learned that. So, tricky things.
There's one last question, perhaps. Anybody who has not asked? Thank you.
I'm just asking out of curiosity, what are the different shaped cochleas that you have found? How are the frequency responses different? And are there any particular species that you found way more intelligent than the others?
Way more what?
Intelligent. Intelligent.
Intelligent. Okay. The problem of intelligence is a big problem. I don't know really. As I always well say, humans are very intelligent. They are an ecological success so far. So I don't know. I think that you have a general rule, I would say. The more social the animals, and the more social and the more predator they are, the more problems they have to solve. So usually the more intelligent they are. You can see the things like this. Because when you have to navigate into a complicated social system, then you have to be able to master a complicated communication system and to know who is who, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to have a memory of that. To have, those elephant seals, I told you that they come to the beach even when they are young. They don't have nothing to do when they are young, except observing. And they spend tons of energy. They take an enormous risk coming there. There are white sharks waiting, in the Pacific Ocean for them. So we saw elephant seals with enormous, entails from sharks. It's terrible for them. They come. They don't come for nothing. I think they come because they learn. So they have to form big memories of how the network is functioning, who is who, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that. It's, yeah.
Okay, so I will take the point here. Guys, we are going towards 4:45, and there's tea outside, and they are likely to close at around 5. all the remaining questions, I think you can have a cup of tea, eat some snack, and ask questions. So that's why we are closing down now. Professor Nicolas, thank you very much. Please take token of appreciation. Token of appreciation from MAHE.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing is, I just want to thank Dr. Deepta Satish, who is the Deputy Director, International Collaborations, who organized this, along with Aparajita. And then we have audiovisual team. We have Dr. Arindam, who is joined online, who is Director of SISTI. Thanks to all of them. And thanks to each one of you for making time and coming over here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.